Could some bad news be coming for Vikings fans? We're going to dive into it on today's edition of Vikings Now by Chat Sports. My name is Patrick Siepman, and welcome into today's show. So, what is the bad news around the Minnesota Vikings? Well, it's actually about Brian Flores, and today we're going to discuss how good Brian Flores has been and why that may lead to him eventually getting a head coaching job and leaving the Minnesota Vikings. And the reason we're talking about this is because Benjamin Solak tweeted this out saying, watching an absurdly well coached Vikings defense against the Bengals, attacking the ball, clouding the star receivers, high effort everywhere, and once again remembering that Brian Flores is the most deserving head coaching candidate in the league. So we'll talk about that, and then also later on today's show, we do have some important injury news around some key players on the Vikings roster heading into this Week 4 matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So we get you guys injury updates there, mainly around Andrew Van Ginkel. We know he was dealing with that concussion, but he's also dealing with a little neck injury. So we get you guys the updates there. But speaking about Brian Flores, if you guys could show Flores some love down below in the comments section, maybe send him a message that we want him to stay here in Minnesota. Just give me those flows down below. Who knows? What if one of his kids, maybe a family member is watching this show and they go down in the comments section and just see thousands of flows rolling in. So if you guys could show Brian Flores some love and type those flows down below. Now, I will say the reason why I'm calling this potential bad news for Vikings fans is because you can't underestimate how important Flores is for this Vikings organization. Because we remember that 2022 season when the Vikings won 13 games, it was all looking good. We were very, very, excited to be in the playoffs that year. We all know what happened. The Vikings defense laid a complete egg in the playoff game, and it was because of Ed Donatel. He was one of the worst defensive coordinators I have ever seen in the NFL. And then the next year, you hire Brian Flores. He has some success. And then 2024, this past season, the Vikings defense was absolutely unbelievable. And now this year, they are looking like they are staying on that same track. Now, I thought a trend with Flores that has been so interesting since being the DC for the Minnesota Vikings was back in 2023 when this team didn't have a lot of talent defensively. He was blitzing all the time. He had a 51.5% blitz rate. But then you added some more talent. You picked up a Jonathan Gennard, a Cashman, a Van Ginkel. He starts blitzing less, only 38.9% of the time. But now this year, so far through 3 games, he's only blitzed 32.7% of the time, which I think is a credit to the personnel defensively because clearly he feels more comfortable with getting home with only sending 4 or 5 guys. Obviously when you add Javon Hargrave, Jonathan Allen on the interior, it's going to help that situation a whole lot. But even it gets better with Flores. Like, look at how ridiculous this graphic is. On the bottom is drop back EPA per play allowed. Well, the Vikings are all the way at the far right by a wide margin at negative 0.4. And then moving up to the top of the graphic is rush EPA per play allowed. The Vikings are, about middle of the pack there, but still, point being, the Vikings are by far on the farthest right of this graphic for those passing plays, drop back EPA per play allowed. And then even just the raw numbers, like the basic defensive numbers, the Vikings are still shaking out very, very well so far. 6th in yards per game, 3rd in pass yards per game. Yeah, they got gashed by the Atlanta Falcons, but I'm going to assume rush yards per game, when it's all said and done at the end of the year, the Vikings will be top 10 in that category. Points per game, already top 10. That's only going to get better as the season goes on, giving up 18.7 points per game. And then obviously, on third downs, Flores has had this defense. Like, even back in that 2023 season when they weren't good top to bottom, they were still fantastic on third downs just because of the unique looks that Flores gives. But even goes further than that. Like, check out these numbers. Turnovers forced, 7 already through 3 games. That's 3rd in the league. Pass yards per play. Teams aren't able to push the ball downfield. 2nd in the league, 4.6. Pressure percentage, number 2 in the league. Defensive EPA, number 1. DVOA, number 1 in the league. Like, every major statistical category, the Vikings are top 5 in so far this season. And it's also not really having their best performance week 1 against the Bears, and they look pretty good against the Falcons, but still, it's only going to get better from here on out for the rest of the season. And also this stat. I absolutely love the havoc stat. We talked about it a lot last year, but havoc is pretty much percentage of plays that result in a pressure, PBU, interception, forced fumble, or TFL. So pretty much the percentage of plays defensively where you have a positive play. Well, the Vikings are number 1. 46.6% of plays result in a havoc stat. And the Broncos are 2. Green Bay Packers are number 3, Bucks 4, and Chargers number 5 there. So all the top defenses in the league, but the Vikings are at the top. And this tweet from Alec Lewis went stupid viral on Twitter, so shout out to Alec for that one. But he tweeted out a play. It was the Vikings 3rd and 8, Bengals are on offense this past weekend, and Flores is just showing a crazy, crazy look. They go from an all-out blitz look to a man coverage look, then to a Tampa 2 look, to playing what looks like quarters on one side and cover 2 on the other side. And like Alex said, just diabolical stuff. And I couldn't imagine, and just close your eyes real quick. Imagine you're an opposing team quarterback. You're playing in U.S. Bank Stadium against Flores' defense. And you just see 8 guys lined up on the line of scrimmage. And you got to decipher, one, who's coming and who's not. And then once you decipher that, you set your protections, and the Vikings show you guys something else with 3 seconds left on the play clock. And then you have to snap the ball. First off, make a read, decipher what the Vikings are in, and then deliver an accurate pass. With all that going on, plus the crowd noise, plus having an elite front for the Vikings, that's why this defense is going to keep on getting better. And J.J. Watt actually quote tweeted that play and said this, "Man, this is a thing of beauty. So incredibly difficult to coordinate, install, get everyone on the same page, and execute. Next level stuff from Flores, and massive props to the players for being able to execute this flawlessly." And also shout out to the safety room, Theo Jackson, Josh Metellus, Harrison Smith, and Jay Ward. Obviously, the Vikings running safeties all over the field. I mean, they're 98% of plays this year running 3 safety sets, but the safeties have been fantastic. Like, they've been executing at a high level, and Flores also deserves a ton of credit for just developing players. Like, there have been so many players that the Vikings have brought in throughout free agency and even the draft that Flores has taken these guys to another level. And I think, the best story under guys developing under Flores has to be Andrew Van Ginkel. Like, Van Ginkel was, he was a solid player before he got to Minnesota, but he was with Flores in Miami, had great years there. Comes to the Vikings, first season, has an all-pro. Byron Murphy, career year under Flores. Jalen Redmond has developed so nicely to be one of the premier defensive tackles in the league. Same with Levi Drake Rodriguez. Then Ivan Pace Jr., I know he's been up and down this season, but I am fully convinced this Flores defense is the only defense he could play in because he is such a unique chess piece out there. You got to kind of deploy him in one way, and Flores just gets the most out of him. But then Isaiah Rodgers, obviously the game he had last week. Theo Jackson's been great. Josh Metellus has been great. Then even I got to throw in Jonathan Gennard, who is already a premier edge rusher before Minnesota, but his game is taking another level, and the same thing can be said about Blake Cashman. And I think this is not a hot take at all. I think this is just, it should be the undisputed take around the defensive coordinator position. Flores is the best defensive coordinator in the NFL, and frankly, I don't think it's close. I'm going to send Spags. He has the history. He's got the Super Bowls, and he's a tremendous defensive mind. But Flores, what he is doing is so unique. Like, there is only one defense in the NFL that runs the way they are ran, and that is the Vikings. And that is all credit to Brian Flores. This guy is fantastic. Like, the modern 2025 defense, it is the Vikings defense. It is so much fun to watch on film. And, hey, if you guys want Flores to stay in Minnesota, just give me those skulls down below in the comment section. I'm really hoping he stays, man. But I got a bad feeling that he might be out the door after this season just because of how special he's been. So if you guys want him to stay in Minnesota, hit me with those skulls down below. And we'll dive into more around Flores and the latest injury news here in a second. But today's episode is brought to you guys by PrizePicks. Now, you and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid. So don't miss any of the excitement this season on PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. And if you guys download the PrizePicks app today, plug in promo code CLNS. We'll hook you guys up with $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Now, PrizePicks, super simple to play. All you got to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. And if you guys get your picks right, you could cash in. Now, PrizePicks is also the best way to get action on sports in more than 40-plus states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. And PrizePicks puts their users first. So all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. They offer Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. Now, PrizePicks, they also offer injury reboots. So if one of your players leaves the game in the first half and doesn't return, PrizePicks won't count it as a loss. So download the PrizePicks app today. Plug in that promo code CLNS, get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. But shout out to PrizePicks for sponsoring today's show. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. All right, one last thing and one last thought I had on Brian Flores is just, one, how unique his scheme is. Like, the Vikings are the only team in the league running this type of scheme, and it's got to just be impossible to game plan for because you're not seeing this every single week. Now, normally in the NFL, you can see, like, all right, that guy came from that tree, so we kind of know we're going to get similar looks. from scouting this defense in week 2 compared to this defense in week 8. But with Flores, it's a unique system. And I couldn't imagine how a scout defense could possibly give a good look. Because, one, it is so unique. So the defensive coordinator or whoever's calling the shots for the scout team defense needs to give the same play calls and the same play design that Flores is. And then also you're going to ask these, guys, practice squad safeties, specifically to execute what Brian Flores asked his safeties to execute. So it's just got to be impossible to give a good look. And I think that's probably another one of the biggest reasons why this defense has been so successful over the last couple of years. But let's talk about some injury news here. Kevin O'Connell spoke to the media on Wednesday, and Kevin Seifert tweeted this out saying Vikings linebacker Andrew Van Ginkel won't practice today, being Wednesday, because of the residual of a neck injury, something he dealt with in training camp. Per Kevin O'Connell, Vikings still figuring out what his week will look like. And obviously, if the Vikes don't have Van Ginkel on Sunday in Dublin, Ireland, it's going to be a massive loss because Van Ginkel is the second most important player on this defense. I think Jonathan Grenard's number 1 by far, but number 2, probably either Cashman or Van Ginkel. I would give Van Ginkel the nod because he is like that perfect player for that Flores system. Like, is he coming off the edge? Is he dropping the coverage? Is he, running a QB spy? Like, he can do damn near everything you would want out of an edge rusher. So if he can't go, it would obviously be a big time loss. But hey, even if he's on a snap count, he can still be productive. This past week, he played 8 snaps. He had 2 sacks. So hopefully 43 is out there and feeling good. But KOC also gave an injury update on J.J. McCarthy. He said he doesn't have an answer at this point on whether McCarthy will practice this week. He has previously said that the Vikings won't put McCarthy back on the field until he can practice regularly. Now, kind of hearing KOC, and maybe it was the tone of his voice is the reason I think this is JJ's not going to play until week 7. I think they are going to make sure he's 110% healthy until they throw him back out there. I could see JJ being DNPs on the practice report or on the injury report every day until leading up to week 7. Then it just might be, all right, he's a full participant those 2 weeks. So obviously dealing with that high ankle sprain, unfortunate, but again, week 7, I think will be under center for this team. And I'll say this on Carson Wentz, with him having these next 2 weeks to really prove himself and get some big time victories for this Vikings team, he still has a chance to save his career. Like, I don't think it's out of the question where if Wentz balls out the next 2 weeks, he's looking good, that another team doesn't throw him a 1-year, $10 million deal and says, hey, come be our stopgap quarterback, our bridge quarterback, a chance to prove yourself. Very similar to what Darnold did with the Vikings last year. Very similar to what Daniel Jones is now doing with the Indianapolis Colts. So I could see him kind of following that same path, but he's got a chance to put some good tape out there, and I think he would do just that. But Ryan Kelly should be back this week, which is fantastic stuff. Dealing with that concussion, got a lengthy injury history with concussion, so the Vikings are probably going to play it safe, but it's going to be good to have him back out there, and it's really good to have this guy back, Christian Darrisaw. Man, if you just look at the play calls Kevin O'Connell was calling week 3 compared to weeks 2 and 1, it is completely different because he has faith in his left tackle. Like, he is running everything to his side. He is, not chipping. He's not putting a tight end over there. He just makes this whole offense operate more smoothly. And it was funny, after the Vikings had a touchdown on the opening drive, Darrisaw's running off the field being, super excited. KOC's running up to him and just saying, like, maybe you were, like, the missing piece. I forget what he exactly said, but he was pretty much giving Darrisaw full credit for what for the Vikings scoring on the opening drive. And I'm sure KOC really believes that. Like, number 71, one of the best in the league. The drop-off between him and Justin School was massive, so it's great to have number 71 back. Now, if you guys want to hit me up on Twitter, that's a handle right there, @PatSeeps. Give me a follow over there, and I'll give you guys a follow right on back. But we'll see you guys next time. As always, SKOL Vikes.